The wooden bench bit cold through Celine's thin dress, but she'd stopped shivering an hour ago. That worried her more than the cold itself. When you stopped feeling the worst of something, it meant your body was giving up the fight. She pulled her shawl tighter, more habit than hope, and stared at the cracked ceiling of Blackthorn Ridge Station. 23 years old, and this was what her life had become. Waiting in an abandoned train depot at midnight, too broke to buy a ticket back east, too proud to beg. The letter was still in her pocket. She didn't need to read it again. Every word had burned itself into her memory during those 2 brutal days on the train. Dear Miss Voss, we are pleased to offer you a position as governess for our children. Room and board included. Please arrive by the 15th. Signed, Margaret Holloway. Except when Selene had knocked on the Holloway ranch door that afternoon, Margaret's face had gone white as a sheet. I didn't write that letter. I'm sorry? My sister-in-law wrote it, as a joke. Margaret's voice had been flat, dead. She thought it would be funny to bring some desperate Eastern girl all the way out here for nothing. I told her it was cruel, but she'd stopped, looking Selene up and down like she was measuring trash. You need to leave. But I have nowhere. The door had slammed. Through the window, Selene had seen Margaret Holloway walk away without looking back. That had been 8 hours ago. Now the station was dark except for one oil lamp the clerk had forgotten to extinguish. The night clerk wouldn't arrive until 6 in the morning. The next eastbound train wasn't until Tuesday. Today was Saturday. Selene had $1.30 to her name. She closed her eyes, trying not to think about how she'd gotten here. The orphanage in Philadelphia that had turned her out at 18. The families she'd worked for who'd let her go without references because she was too attached to the children or too quiet, or simply because they'd found someone cheaper. The endless succession of rented rooms, temporary positions, false starts. She'd spent 5 years clawing for stability, and every time she got close, the floor dropped out. The worst part? She'd actually let herself hope this time. During those 2 days on the train, watching the landscape transform from green hills to endless prairie, she'd imagined what it might be like. A real position. Children who might actually need her. A place where she could finally stop running. Foolish. The station door banged open. Selene jerked upright, heart hammering. For a second she thought it might be someone from the Holloway ranch, maybe coming to apologize, to say it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. But the man who walked in was nothing like the Holloways. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with shoulders that filled his worn leather coat. Dark hair showed beneath his hat, and his face was all hard angles, sharp jaw, straight nose, eyes that looked like they'd seen things and decided most of them weren't worth commenting on. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from years of physical work, every step deliberate. 2 small girls followed behind him, identical twins with dark braids and serious faces. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The man's eyes swept the station and landed on Selene. He didn't look surprised to see her there, didn't look much of anything really, just acknowledged her presence the way you'd acknowledge a chair. Papa, why is that lady sleeping here? One of the twins whispered. Her voice carried in the empty station. Hush, Emma. But she looks cold. I said hush. The man walked to the ticket window, peered through it, then swore under his breath. He checked his pocket watch, swore again. Clerk's not here, Selene said. Her voice came out rougher than she'd intended. Won't be back until morning. The man turned to look at her properly for the first time. His eyes were gray, she noticed, the color of storm clouds. You know when the next train east comes through? Tuesday morning? Something flickered across his face. Frustration, maybe, or calculation. You waiting on that train? Selene hesitated. The truth felt too pathetic to speak aloud, but lying took energy she didn't have. Yes. You got a place to stay until then? The question was blunt, not unkind. Selene lifted her chin. I'm managing. That's not what I asked. Papa, the other twin tugged at his coat. Sarah's tired. I know, baby. He looked at his daughters, then back at Selene. For a long moment he just stood there, and Selene had the uncomfortable feeling she was being measured somehow. Assessed. Finally he said, What's your name? Selene Voss. Dawson Creed. He nodded toward the twins. Emma and Sarah. We were supposed to meet someone on tonight's train, but she didn't show. You good with children, Miss Voss? The question caught her off guard. Yes, I've worked as a governess. Why are you sleeping in a train station? Heat flooded Celine's cheeks. That's my business. Humor me. Why should I? Because I'm about to offer you something, and I need to know if you're desperate enough to say yes. His voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. You running from the law? No. Owe money to the wrong people? No. Got a husband looking for you? Or no? Selene stood up, anger giving her strength. I came here for a position that turned out to be a lie. I have no money for a hotel and no money for a ticket home. There. Are you satisfied? Emma gasped softly. Sarah pressed closer to her father's leg. Dawson Creed studied Selene for another moment, then nodded like she'd passed some kind of test. My wife died 4 months ago. Fever. The girls need looking after, and I need someone to manage the house. I've been through 3 housekeepers since Caroline passed. They all quit. Why? Ranch is too isolated. Town's too small. Work's too hard. He paused. Or they don't like taking orders from a man with a bad reputation. What kind of reputation? The kind that makes people talk. He didn't elaborate. I can offer you room and board, $20 a month, and a letter of reference if you last 6 months. You'd have your own room in the main house, meals included. I expect the house kept clean. The girls taught their numbers and letters, and 3 meals on the table every day. Celine's heart was pounding. $20 a month was more than she'd made in Philadelphia. Room and board meant security. But something about this felt too easy, too sudden. Why are you offering this to a complete stranger? Dawson looked at his daughters. Emma was holding Sarah's hand, both of them watching Selene with wide, curious eyes. When he looked back at Selene, something in his expression had softened, just barely. You're the first person in 4 months who's asked me why instead of just saying yes. That doesn't answer my question. No, he agreed. It doesn't. He adjusted his hat. Look, Miss Voss, I don't know you from Eve. You could be a terrible housekeeper. You could steal the silver and run off next week. But my girls have been through hell, and the last 3 women I hired treated them like furniture. Just now, when Emma spoke, you looked at her like she mattered. That's more than I've gotten from anyone else. Celine's throat tightened. She looked at the twins, Emma still holding Sarah's hand, both of them tired and rumpled from travel. They looked like they'd been holding each other up for a long time. Where is this ranch? 45 minutes north. We've got horses, cattle, and about 600 acres. It's just me, the girls, 5 ranch hands, and my father when he's not drunk. Dawson's voice was flat when he mentioned his father. I won't lie to you. It's hard country. Winter's brutal, summer's worse, and people in town already gossip about me enough without adding a young woman living in my house. Then why risk it? Because my daughters deserve better than what they've got right now. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And I'm tired of watching them cry themselves to sleep because another housekeeper quit and they think it's their fault. Sarah made a small sound. Emma's face crumpled. We're not bad, Emma whispered. We promise we're not bad. Something cracked open in Selene's chest. She knew that feeling, that desperate need to prove you were worth keeping. She'd spent her whole life trying to be good enough, quiet enough, useful enough to make people want her around. These girls understood. You're not bad, Selene said softly. She knelt down so she was eye level with them. Sometimes grown-ups leave for reasons that have nothing to do with you. It's not fair and it hurts, but it's not your fault. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Sarah just stared at Selene like she was trying to decide if she could be trusted. Dawson cleared his throat. That's the job. You want it or not? Selene stood slowly. Every practical instinct she had was screaming that this was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know anything about his ranch or his reputation or why 3 housekeepers had quit. Going home with a strange man to an isolated ranch was exactly the kind of decision desperate women made before they disappeared. But she looked at those 2 little girls and she thought about the train station bench and the fact that she had $1.30 and nowhere else to go. One condition, she said. Dawson raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? You said you need someone. That means I have leverage. She kept her voice steady. I want to try it for 1 week. If either of us decides it's not working, I get train fare back to Philadelphia, in writing. Fair enough? He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, scribbled something, tore out the page, and handed it to her. Good for one train ticket east, signed Dawson Creed. Anything else? My own room with a lock on the door. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fine. And I eat with the family, not with the ranch hands, not in the kitchen. I'm not a servant. I'm a governess. You'll work like everyone else. I didn't say I wouldn't work. I said I'm not a servant. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered across Dawson Creed's face. You've got spine. Good. You'll need it. He offered his hand. We have a deal, Miss Voss? Selene looked at his hand. Calloused, scarred, strong. The hand of a man who did hard work and expected the same from others. She shook it. We have a deal. Good. Get your things. This is my things. She gestured to the single battered carpet bag at her feet. Dawson looked at the bag, then at her, and something complicated crossed his face. Christ, he muttered. All right, let's go. The wagon ride to the ranch was silent, except for the creak of wheels and the steady clip of hooves. Emma and Sarah dozed against each other in the back, wrapped in blankets. Selene sat up front next to Dawson, watching the prairie unfold under moonlight. It was beautiful in a harsh way. Endless grass rippling like water, scattered rocks casting long shadows, the sky so full of stars it hurt to look at. Back east, Selene had never seen this many stars. The city lights drowned them out. You'll freeze if you keep sitting like that, Dawson said. Selene realized she was hunched over, trying to conserve warmth. I'm fine. Don't be stupid. He reached behind the seat and pulled out another blanket, tossed it to her. You're no good to my daughters if you catch pneumonia on day one. The blanket was rough wool, but warm. Selene wrapped it around her shoulders, relieved despite herself. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Emma. She's the one who noticed you were cold. He kept his eyes on the road. She's like that. Notices things. Selene glanced back at the sleeping twins. They seem like good girls. They are. His voice went soft. Too good for what life's handed them. Their mother, you said she died of fever? Yes. The word was clipped. Anything else you want to know, or can we ride in peace? Selene bit back a retort. The man had just offered her a job and a place to stay. She could tolerate his moods. Peace is fine. They rode in silence for another 20 minutes. Selene was starting to wonder if the ranch even existed when lights appeared in the distance. A main house, a barn, several outbuildings. It was bigger than she'd expected. The hands live in the bunkhouse, Dawson said as they approached. You'll meet them tomorrow. They're good men, but they'll test you. Don't take any shit from them. I won't. And my father. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. Walter Creed. He lives in the foreman's cabin. Mostly he drinks and complains, but sometimes he's useful. If he bothers you, come to me. Bothers me how? Dawson looked at her. He's got opinions about women. Strong opinions. Don't let him make you feel small. Selene almost laughed. Men have been trying to make me feel small my whole life, Mr. Creed. I'm used to it. Yeah. He jumped down from the wagon, and for a second his face caught the lamplight from the house. He looked tired, bone tired, the kind that came from months of carrying too much weight. I guess you would be. He woke the girls gently, and Selene climbed down on her own, grabbing her carpet bag. The house was 2 stories, wood frame, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Paint was peeling in places, and one of the shutters hung crooked, but it was solid. Real. Inside, the main room was dominated by a large fireplace. Furniture was sparse but functional. A worn sofa, 2 armchairs, a dining table that could seat 8. Everything was clean but dusty, like someone had been maintaining it without really caring. Kitchen's through there, Dawson pointed. Your room's upstairs, second door on the left. Girls sleep in the room next to yours. My room's at the end of the hall. Privy's out back, but there's a chamber pot under your bed. Water pumps by the kitchen door. Selene nodded, trying to take it all in. Emma, Sarah, say goodnight to Miss Voss. Good night, they chorused, too tired to be shy. Good night, Selene said. Sleep well. Dawson herded them upstairs, and Selene heard the soft murmur of his voice, the quiet sounds of bedtime routine. It felt intimate somehow, hearing him with his daughters. Gentle in a way he hadn't been with her. She climbed the stairs slowly, found the second door on the left. The room was small, just a bed, a dresser, a washstand, but it had a window overlooking the prairie and a door that did indeed have a lock. Selene set her carpet bag down and sat on the bed. The mattress was thin, but better than the train station bench. Better than half the places she'd slept in the last 5 years. She should have felt relieved, grateful even. Instead, she felt numb. A soft knock made her look up. Dawson stood in the doorway, keeping a respectful distance. "I'll expect you up at 5, he said. "Breakfast by 6. The girls usually wake around 7. I've got business in town tomorrow afternoon, so you'll watch them then." "All right." He started to turn, then stopped. "Look, I know this isn't ideal. You don't know me, don't know this place. But I meant what I said. You do right by my daughters, and I'll do right by you. That's the deal." "I understand." "Do you?" He leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "Because you've got that look people get when they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, you don't trust this is real." Selene met his eyes. "In my experience, Mr. Creed, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. This isn't too good to be true. It's a job. A hard one. You'll earn every penny." He pushed off the doorframe. "But yeah, I get it. Trust takes time. We've got a week to figure out if this works." "A week," Selene agreed. "Get some sleep, Miss Voss. Tomorrow starts early." He left, footsteps fading down the hall. Selene heard his door close, then silence. She stood and locked her door. Then she unpacked her carpet bag. 3 dresses, 1 nightgown, a brush, a bar of soap, and a small leather journal she'd carried since the orphanage. Everything she owned in the world fit in one bag. She changed into her nightgown, washed her face in the basin, and climbed into bed. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the sky like someone had flung diamonds at black velvet. The prairie wind whispered against the glass. Selene closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't settle. She kept thinking about Dawson Creed's gray eyes, the way he'd looked at his daughters, the flatness in his voice when he mentioned his dead wife. This was temporary, she reminded herself. 1 week, maybe less if it didn't work out. But as she drifted towards sleep, she couldn't shake the memory of Emma's small voice. "We promise we're not bad." Yeah, Selene thought. I know exactly how that feels. Oh, she woke to pale gray light and someone moving around downstairs. For a disoriented second, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The train station, Dawson's offer, the wagon ride through moonlit prairie. The ranch. She was at the ranch. Selene sat up, shivering. The room was freezing. She dressed quickly in the nicest of her 3 dresses, dark blue cotton, practical but not ugly, and pinned her hair into a simple bun. No mirror, so she did it by feel. Downstairs, she found Dawson at the kitchen stove, frying eggs with the efficiency of long practice. He glanced up when she entered. "Coffee's on the table. Eggs will be ready in a minute." "I can do that." Selene reached for the spatula. He moved it out of her reach. "You can start tomorrow. Today I want to see if you can actually cook or if you've been lying about your qualifications." "I haven't been lying." "We'll see." He plated the eggs. 4 plates, she noticed. 1 for each of them. "Girls will be down soon. They're shy at first, but they warm up quick. Don't try too hard. They can smell desperation." "Excuse me?" The last housekeeper practically begged them to like her, followed them around, bought them candy, made promises she didn't keep. He set the plates on the table. They hated her. Kids know when someone's genuine and when someone's just trying to get paid. "I'm here to get paid," Selene pointed out. "Yeah, but you're not pretending otherwise." He poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs. "That's the difference." Footsteps on the stairs announced the twins' arrival. They appeared in the doorway wearing matching nightgowns, hair tangled from sleep. Emma spotted Selene and smiled. Sarah hung back, cautious. "Morning, Papa," Emma said. "Morning, baby. Wash up and sit down. Breakfast ready." They disappeared to the washroom, came back with clean faces and damp hands. Emma sat next to Selene without hesitation. Sarah sat next to Dawson, shooting Selene uncertain glances. "Miss Voss is going to be staying with us for a while," Dawson said as he served eggs. "You'll mind her like you'd mind me. Understood?" "Yes, Papa," they said in unison. "And if you've got problems with her, you come to me. Don't bottle it up." Emma nodded seriously. Sarah just stared at her plate. They ate in silence. The eggs were good, better than Selene had expected. She wondered how long Dawson had been cooking for his daughters, handling both ranch work and household duties. No wonder he looked exhausted. "What subjects have you been studying?" Selene asked the girls. Emma perked up. "We know our numbers to 100, and I can read some words." "What about you, Sarah?" Sarah shrugged. "Sarah's shy," Emma explained. "But she's smart, smarter than me." "I doubt that," Selene said. "You both seem very bright." "Our mama used to teach us," Emma continued. "She was going to teach us French, but then Her face fell. "That's enough," Dawson said quietly. "Finish your breakfast." An awkward silence descended. Selene wanted to say something comforting, but what? She knew what it was like to lose people, but she'd never had a mother to lose in the first place. After breakfast, Dawson stood. "I've got work. Miss Voss, the girls can show you around the house. Make a list of what needs doing, and we'll talk tonight about your schedule." "Wait." Selene stood too. "You're just leaving?" "I've got 200 head of cattle that need tending, fences to mend, and a water pump that's been broken for 3 days. Yeah, I'm leaving." He grabbed his hat from the hook by the door. "You'll be fine. The girls know the routine." And he was gone, door swinging shut behind him. Selene looked at Emma and Sarah. They looked back at her. "Well," Selene said, "I suppose you'd better show me around." Batum. The house tour took 20 minutes. Downstairs was the main room, kitchen, Dawson's office, and a small washroom. Upstairs was 4 bedrooms and another washroom. Everything was clean but neglected. Dust on the windowsills, fingerprints on the mirrors, small repairs needed everywhere. "The last lady didn't like cleaning," Emma explained as they walked. "She said it wasn't her job." "What did she think her job was?" "Sitting in the kitchen reading magazines." Emma said it matter-of-factly. "Papa fired her after 2 weeks." "And the one before that?" "She was mean. She locked Sarah in the closet when she wouldn't eat her carrots." Selene stopped walking. "She did what?" "Sarah doesn't like carrots," Emma said. "They make her tummy hurt. But the lady said she was just being difficult, so she locked her in the closet until Papa came home." "How long was she in there?" 4 hours. Emma's voice went small. "I tried to let her out, but the door was locked." Rage, white-hot and unexpected, flooded through Selene. She knelt down and took Emma's hands. "That should never have happened. Ever. Do you understand me? No adult should ever lock a child in a closet, no matter what." Emma's eyes widened. "Papa said the same thing. He yelled so loud the windows shook." "Good. Are you going to lock us in closets?" "Never." Selene said it fiercely. "I promise you that right now. If you do something wrong, we'll talk about it. We won't use fear." Emma studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, I believe you." It was such a simple thing, a child's trust, offered cautiously, but it hit Selene harder than she'd expected. "Thank you," she said softly. They continued the tour. The girls showed her where things were kept, explained the routine their mother had established, talked about their father with a mixture of love and worry that Selene recognized. They were taking care of him, she realized. 2 6-year-olds trying to hold their father together while he grieved. By midday, Selene had made her list and started planning. The house needed a deep clean, the kitchen needed organizing, and the girls needed structure. She could do this. She'd done it before. But as she stood at the kitchen window watching Dawson work with horses in the distance, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of something much bigger than a simple job. This family was broken, held together by sheer will and not much else. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, Selene wanted to help fix it. But Dawson came back for lunch covered in dust and sweat. He washed at the pump outside, then came in to find the table set and soup waiting. "You made soup," he said. "I found vegetables in the cellar. The girls said you liked beef stew." He sat down slowly, looking at the bowl, like he wasn't sure what to make of it. Emma and Sarah were already eating, chattering to Selene about a bird's nest they'd found near the barn. "It's good," he said after the first spoonful. "Thank you." They ate mostly in silence. Dawson seemed uncomfortable with conversation, and Selene wasn't going to force it, but she noticed he finished the entire bowl and took a second helping. "I'm headed to town after this," he said. "Need to meet with the feed supplier. You'll watch the girls?" "That's what you're paying me for." Right. He stood, grabbing his hat again. There's a shotgun in my office, top shelf. You know how to use one? Selene blinked. What? Coyotes sometimes come close to the house. If you see one, fire a warning shot. They'll run. You want me to shoot coyotes? I want you to scare them off. There's a difference. He paused in the doorway. And if anyone comes to the house asking questions, don't answer them. Send them to find me. What kind of questions? But he was already gone. Emma giggled. Papa doesn't like talking. I noticed, Selene said dryly. The afternoon passed quietly. Selene started cleaning, really cleaning, not just tidying. She swept, scrubbed, beat rugs, polished windows. The girls helped, clearly unused to being included, but eager to try. Around 3 o'clock, a wagon pulled up outside. Selene wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door. An older man was climbing down from the driver's seat, 60s maybe, with white hair and a weathered face that might have been handsome once. He moved with the careful precision of someone who'd been drinking. Help you? Selene called from the porch. The man squinted at her. Who the hell are you? Selene Voss. I work here. And you are? Walter Creed. He climbed the porch steps, swaying slightly. I live here. Where's my son? Dawson's father. Of course. He went to town. Should be back before dinner. Walter looked her up and down, and Selene felt her skin crawl. It wasn't quite leering, but it was close. So you're the new housekeeper. How long you planning to last? As long as Mr. Creed needs me. That's what they all say. He pushed past her into the house. Then they realize this place is cursed and they run like rabbits. Cursed, Selene repeated. 3 housekeepers in 4 months. Caroline dying out of nowhere. The drought that nearly killed us last year. Walter headed straight for the whiskey cabinet. This ranch is cursed, girl. You'll see. Emma appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, face pale. Sarah was right behind her. Grandpa, Emma said quietly, you promised Papa you wouldn't drink during the day. I promised no such thing. Walter poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Don't you start nagging me like your father does. Maybe you should wait for Mr. Creed to get back, Selene said carefully. Maybe you should mind your own business. Walter downed the whiskey in one gulp, then poured another. You've been here what, 1 day? Don't pretend you know how this family works. I know the girls don't want to see their grandfather drunk. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Walter's head snapped around, eyes narrowing. You've got a mouth on you, and you've got a drinking problem. Seems we both have things to work on. For a second, Selene thought he might throw the glass at her. Then he laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Oh, Dawson's going to have fun with you. You're not like the others. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Give it 2 weeks. You'll run just like they did. He drained the whiskey, grabbed the bottle, and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Selene stood very still, heart pounding. Emma and Sarah were staring at her with wide eyes. No one talks to Grandpa like that, Emma whispered. Maybe someone should, Selene said. She took a breath, steadying herself. Is he always like this? Mostly. Sarah spoke for the first time that day, voice soft. He used to be nice. Papa says the war made him mean. Well, mean or not, he's not drinking in front of you two. Not while I'm here. It was a bold promise, probably foolish. But she'd meant what she said. These girls had been through enough. They didn't need to watch their grandfather drink himself to death, too. When Dawson came back an hour later, Selene told him what happened. He listened without interrupting, face carefully blank. I'll talk to him, he said finally. That's it? What else do you want me to say? He pulled off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. My father's been drunk since I was 12 years old. Talking doesn't fix it. Nothing fixes it. He shouldn't be around the girls when he's like that. You think I don't know that? Dawson's voice went hard. You think I haven't tried? But he's my father, Miss Voss. I can't just throw him off the ranch. Why not? Because despite everything, he's still my family, and I don't abandon family. The way he said it made Selene wonder who had abandoned him, but she didn't ask. The girls were scared. I know. Some of the anger went out of him. I'll talk to him. Make sure he understands he stays in his cabin when he's drinking. That's the best I can do. It wasn't enough, but Selene nodded. All right. Anything else happen while I was gone? Just cleaning. Good. He moved toward the stairs, then stopped. Thank you for standing up to him. Not many people do that. Seems like someone should. Yeah. He almost smiled. Yeah, I guess so. The week passed in a blur of work. Selene fell into a routine. Up at 5, breakfast at 6, mornings spent teaching the girls their letters and numbers, afternoons cleaning or cooking or mending. The ranch hands were polite but distant, clearly waiting to see if she'd last longer than the others. Walter stayed in his cabin, true to whatever Dawson had said to him. And Dawson himself remained a mystery. He was gone most days, working from dawn until after dark. When he was home, he was quiet, present but not engaged. He ate the meals Selene prepared without comment, answered questions with as few words as possible, kissed his daughters goodnight, and disappeared into his room. But Selene noticed things. She noticed how carefully he maintained his tools, how he never raised his voice at the horses, how he checked on the girls every night, even though they were already asleep. She noticed the way his jaw tightened when someone mentioned his wife, the careful distance he kept from everyone, the exhaustion he carried like a second skin. Dawson Creed was a man barely holding himself together, and everyone around him either didn't notice or didn't care. On the 6th day, Selene was in town picking up supplies when she overheard 2 women talking outside the general store. That young thing living in his house? It's shameful. I heard she's from back east, probably one of those desperate types looking for a husband. Well, she won't find one with Dawson Creed. That man's heart died with Caroline. Still, it's not proper. A single woman, a widower, those poor motherless girls. Selene stepped around the corner. Both women went silent, faces flushing. Afternoon, ladies, Selene said pleasantly. Lovely weather we're having. She walked into the store, leaving them sputtering. So that was how it was going to be. The town had already decided she was either desperate or conniving, and nothing she did would change their minds. Fine. She'd dealt with gossip before. That evening, she made roast chicken for dinner. Dawson came in late as usual and sat down without speaking. Emma and Sarah chattered about their day. They'd found wildflowers, practiced writing their names, helped Selene bake bread. How was town? Dawson asked Selene. Fine. She passed him the potatoes. People are talking. They always talk. About me, living here. Apparently it's shameful. Emma and Sarah went quiet. Dawson set down his fork. What people? Does it matter? It matters if they're bothering you. They're not bothering me. They're just talking. Selene kept her voice light. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be used to it. He looked angry, the first strong emotion she'd seen from him in days. This is my ranch. What I do here is my business, and who I hire is my business. They don't like it. They can stay the hell away. Papa said hell, Sarah whispered. Papa's mad, Emma whispered back. Dawson took a breath. Sorry, girls, but I mean it, Miss Voss. You have a problem with anyone in town, you tell me. I'll handle it. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can, but you're under my roof now, which makes you my responsibility. He picked up his fork again. That's just how it is. It was the most he'd said to her in 6 days. After dinner, after the girls were in bed, Selene found him on the porch. He was leaning against the railing, staring out at the dark prairie. Tomorrow's the 7th day, she said. I know. Our week's up. I know that too. Selene stepped beside him. The night was cool, stars bright overhead. So what's the verdict? You're asking me? He glanced at her. I figured you'd already made up your mind. I want to know what you think first. Dawson was quiet for a moment. The house is cleaner than it's been in months. The girls actually smile now. You haven't stolen anything or run off or done any of the things I was worried about. He paused. You stood up to my father, which took guts, and you told off the town gossips without making a scene. So yeah, Miss Voss, I think it's working. The girls like you, Selene said. That's rare. They're good kids. They are. And they deserve someone who's going to stay. Is that you? Selene looked out at the prairie. A week ago, she'd been sleeping on a train station bench, convinced her life was over. Now she was standing on a ranch porch in the middle of nowhere, talking to a grieving widower about his daughters. It was insane. It was also the closest thing to home she'd felt in years. Yeah, she said. I think it is. Dawson nodded slowly. All right then. Guess you're hired. Guess I am. They stood in comfortable silence, and for the first time since arriving, Selene felt something loosen in her chest. This wasn't perfect. The ranch was isolated, the work was hard, the town hated her, and Dawson Creed was still a closed book. But she had a place to sleep, food to eat, 2 little girls who were starting to trust her. For now, that was enough. The first real trouble started 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning that began like any other. Selene was in the kitchen kneading bread dough when she heard horses approaching, more than one, moving fast. Through the window, she saw 4 riders pull up to the house, all of them wearing clean shirts and expressions that meant business. Dawson was out checking the north pasture. The ranch hands were scattered across the property. She was alone with the girls. Emma appeared at her elbow. Who are they? I don't know. Go upstairs with Sarah, now. But now, Emma. Something in Selene's voice made the girl obey without argument. She grabbed Sarah's hand and they disappeared up the stairs just as boots hit the porch. The knock was loud, authoritative. Selene wiped flour from her hands and opened the door. The man standing there was maybe 40, well-fed, with the kind of confidence that came from money and status. Behind him stood 3 others, hired muscle, from the look of them. Help you? Selene asked. I'm here to see Dawson Creed. He's not available. Then I'll wait. The man moved to step inside. Selene blocked the doorway. I said he's not available. You can come back this evening or you can leave a message. The man's eyes narrowed. And who exactly are you? The person telling you to get off this porch. One of the men behind him laughed, cut it off quick when the leader shot him a look. My name is Victor Henley. I own the largest cattle operation in 3 counties, and I don't take orders from housekeepers. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. Give this to Creed. Tell him my offer stands for 48 hours. After that, I'll take what I want anyway. He shoved the paper at her. Selene took it, forcing herself to stay calm. I'll make sure he gets it. You do that. Henley tipped his hat, mockery in the gesture. And tell him if he's smart, he'll take the deal. This drought's not getting better, and neither is his debt situation. They left, horses kicking up dust as they rode toward town. Selene waited until they were out of sight before unfolding the paper. It was a purchase offer. For the ranch. All 600 acres, the house, the outbuildings, everything. The price listed was insultingly low, maybe a third of what the property was worth. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, final offer. Accept by Friday or face foreclosure proceedings. Selene read it twice, anger building with each word. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it in her apron pocket. When Dawson came back for lunch, she handed it to him without preamble. A man named Victor Henley stopped by. Dawson's face went hard. He read the offer, jaw clenching tighter with each line. Then he crumpled it and threw it in the fireplace. Papa? Emma had crept downstairs. Who was that man? Nobody important, baby. He seemed mean. He is mean. Dawson pulled Emma into a quick hug. But he's not our problem. Go wash up for lunch. After the girls left, Selene said quietly, Is he right about the debt? That's not your concern. It is if the ranch gets foreclosed and I lose my job. Dawson turned to face her. You've been here 3 weeks, Miss Voss. Don't pretend you're invested in this place. The words stung more than they should have. I'm invested in those girls upstairs, and they need stability, which they won't have if their home gets taken away. Their home isn't getting taken away. Then what's the plan? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're drowning and too proud to ask for help. I don't need help. His voice went cold. I need people to mind their own business and let me handle my affairs. Fine. Selene turned back to the stove. But when Victor Henley comes back, and he will come back, don't expect me to keep lying to your daughters about why strange men keep showing up making threats. She heard him leave, boots heavy on the floorboards. The door slammed. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, face anxious. Are you mad at Papa? No, sweetheart. We just had a disagreement. The last lady had disagreements with Papa all the time. Then she left. Selene knelt down, meeting Emma's worried eyes. I'm not leaving. People can disagree without one of them running away. That's part of being a family. We're a family? The question was so hopeful it broke Selene's heart. We're working on it. That seemed to satisfy Emma. She skipped back upstairs to help Sarah with her letters, leaving Selene alone with her thoughts. She shouldn't have pushed. Dawson's finances were his business, and she was just the housekeeper. But she'd seen the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his shoulders. The man was carrying too much weight, and eventually something was going to break. She just hoped it wouldn't be the girls who paid the price. The rest of the week passed in tense silence. Dawson avoided her, speaking only when necessary. The ranch hands started whispering among themselves, and twice Selene caught them watching the road like they expected trouble. Friday came and went. No word from Henley. Saturday morning, Selene took the girls into town for supplies. She'd been avoiding it, the stares, the whispers, the way conversation died when she walked into a room. But they needed flour and sugar, and Dawson was too busy to make the trip. The general store was crowded. Selene felt eyes on her the moment she walked in. "Miss Voss?" The clerk was polite but cool. "What can I get you?" She handed over her list. While he gathered items, she kept the girls close, trying to ignore the women clustered near the fabric display. Their voices carried anyway. Shameful, really. A man barely 4 months widowed, and her practically living as his wife. Those poor children. Someone should report it. It's not decent. Selene's hands clenched. Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Why are they talking about us?" "Because they have nothing better to do." Selene forced a smile. "Don't pay them any mind." But Sarah had heard too. Her face was pale, eyes swimming with tears she was too proud to shed. The clerk returned with the supplies. Selene paid and turned to leave, found her path blocked by one of the whispering women. "Excuse me," Selene said. The woman didn't move. She was maybe 50, well-dressed, with the pinched expression of someone who'd spent years judging others and calling it virtue. "You're the woman living at the Creed Ranch." "I work at the Creed Ranch." "And you are?" "Martha Henley." "Of course. Victor Henley's wife." "My husband made Mr. Creed a very generous offer," Martha continued. "He'd be wise to take it." "That's between your husband and Mr. Creed." "Is it? Because from what I hear, you've inserted yourself quite thoroughly into Dawson Creed's affairs." Her eyes flicked to the girls. "One might wonder what your true intentions are." The implication was clear. Rage flooded through Selene, white-hot and dangerous. "One might mind their own business," she said softly. "And one might remember that spreading malicious gossip about a man's household is a good way to find oneself unwelcome in polite society." Martha's face flushed. "How dare you?" "How dare I what? Stand up to a bully who hides behind respectability while trying to steal a man's land?" Selene stepped closer, keeping her voice low so the girls wouldn't hear. "Your husband's offer was an insult, and everyone knows it. So you can take your fake concern and your vicious rumors, and you can leave. Me. Alone." She pushed past Martha, girls in tow, and walked out of the store with her head high and her heart pounding. They were halfway back to the wagon when Emma said, "That was amazing." "That was rude," Selene corrected, but she couldn't quite suppress her smile. "She deserved it," Sarah said quietly. It was the most words she'd strung together in weeks. "Maybe." Selene loaded the supplies into the wagon. "But I probably just made things worse." She had no idea how right she was. That night, after the girls were asleep, someone threw a rock through the kitchen window. Selene was washing dishes when glass exploded inward. She threw herself backward, barely avoiding the shards. The rock hit the floor and rolled to a stop near her feet. There was a note tied to it. She picked it up with shaking hands and unfolded it. "Leave Blackthorn Ridge or face the consequences. You're not wanted here. No signature. Just that single threat, written in neat block letters." Selene stood there, holding the note, glass crunching under her feet, and felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't just gossip anymore. Someone wanted her gone badly enough to make threats. The office door banged open. Dawson appeared, shotgun in hand, eyes wild. "What happened?" Selene handed him the note. He read it once, then looked at the broken window, at the rock on the floor, at Selene's face. Something dangerous flashed across his expression. "Get away from the window. Dawson, now." She moved. He crossed to the window and looked out, scanning the darkness. After a long moment, he lowered the gun. "They're gone." He turned to face her. "You're bleeding." Selene looked down. A small cut on her forearm, nothing serious. I'm fine. You're not fine. Sit down. He grabbed a clean cloth and the whiskey bottle, pushed her into a chair. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the cut, but his face was furious. This is my fault, he said. How is someone throwing rocks your fault? I should have known Henley wouldn't take no for an answer. Should have known he'd go after you instead of me. He wrapped the cloth around her arm. I'm sorry. I don't need an apology. I need to know what we're dealing with. Dawson sat back, running a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. Victor Henley wants this ranch, has for years. My father sold him some water rights back when I was a kid, and Henley's been trying to buy the rest ever since. After Caroline died, after the drought hit, he saw an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? The kind where a man drowning in debt and grief might be desperate enough to sell cheap. Dawson's voice was bitter. He's been spreading rumors, turning people against me, making it harder to get credit or hire workers. Now he's going after you because he knows... He stopped. Knows what? Knows you're the only thing holding this household together. Dawson met her eyes. The girls were falling apart before you came. So was I, if I'm being honest. Henley sees that if he can drive you away, the rest falls apart too. Selene absorbed this. So what do we do? We? There's no we, Miss Voss. You pack your things and take the first train east. I'll give you 3 months' wages and a good reference. You can start over somewhere safe. No. This isn't a negotiation. You're right. It's not. Selene stood, meeting his stare. I'm staying. Did you not just read that note? Someone wants you gone badly enough to throw rocks through windows. Next time it might be worse. Let it be worse. I'm not running. Why? Dawson's voice rose. Why are you being so damn stubborn about this? Because those girls upstairs have lost enough. The words exploded out of her. They lost their mother. They've lost 3 housekeepers. They don't need to lose me too just because some rich bastard wants your land. Dawson stared at her. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I agreed to take care of your daughters. So you can tell Victor Henley and his wife and anyone else who wants me gone that I'm staying. And if they don't like it, they can go straight to hell. For a long moment, Dawson didn't move. Then something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect, or something harder to name. You're insane, he said. Probably. You're going to get hurt. I've been hurt before. I survived. He shook his head, but there was something almost like a smile at the corner of his mouth. Fine. You want to stay and fight? We fight. But you listen to me, Miss Voss. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't answer the door without checking who it is first. And if anyone threatens you again, you come to me immediately. Understood? Understood. Good. He stood, grabbed a hammer and some boards. Help me cover this window. We'll fix it properly tomorrow. They worked in silence, boarding up the broken glass. When they finished, Dawson said, Get some sleep. I'll keep watch tonight. You need sleep too. I'll sleep when I know my family's safe. The word family hung in the air between them. Selene felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not making me leave. Dawson looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since they'd met, his expression was completely open. You really would have stayed even if I'd ordered you to go, wouldn't you? Yes. Why? Selene thought about the girls sleeping upstairs, about the way Emma had called them a family, about the feeling of finally having a place that mattered. Because I'm tired of running, she said, and because someone needs to stand up for what's right. Dawson nodded slowly. All right then. Welcome to the war, Miss Voss. I've been in wars before, Mr. Creed. I know how to hold my ground. I'm starting to see that. He headed upstairs, leaving Selene alone in the kitchen. She cleaned up the glass, swept the floor, and tried not to think about what she'd just committed herself to. She was staying in a town that hated her, working for a man drowning in debt, facing threats from people with more power and money than she'd ever have. It was possibly the stupidest decision she'd ever made. But as she climbed the stairs and checked on the sleeping girls, Emma curled around her doll, Sarah's hand tucked under her cheek. She knew she'd made the right choice. These children needed her, and maybe, just maybe, she needed them too. The next morning, word of the broken window spread through town like wildfire. Selene heard about it from Tom Fletcher, one of the ranch hands, when he came in for breakfast. Folks are talking, Tom said carefully. He was the oldest of the crew, maybe 60, with a face like worn leather and eyes that missed nothing. Saying you provoked Martha Henley yesterday. I told her the truth. If that's provoking her, so be it. Tom grunted. Truth don't matter much when the person you're telling it to owns half the town. He accepted the coffee Selene poured. You watch yourself, Miss Voss. The Henleys don't forgive insults. I'll keep that in mind. After breakfast, Selene took the girls outside for their lessons. It was a beautiful morning, clear sky, gentle breeze, the kind of day that made you forget winter was coming. They were practicing their letters in the dirt when Walter Creed appeared. He looked worse than usual, unshaven, red-eyed, swaying on his feet. But for once, he wasn't holding a bottle. Heard you had trouble last night, he said without preamble. News travels fast. Small town. Everything travels fast. He squinted at her. You staying or running? Staying. Huh. He sat down heavily on the porch steps. Didn't think you had it in you. Lots of people underestimate me. They usually regret it. Walter barked a laugh. I bet they do. He watched the girls for a moment. They like you. Haven't seen them smile this much since Caroline died. It was the first time he'd mentioned his daughter-in-law without hostility. Selene sat down next to him, keeping a careful distance. Did you know her well? Well enough. His voice went rough. She was good for Dawson, softened his edges. When she died, he went hard again, like he was before the war. Dawson was in the war? Walter's eyes went distant. We both were. Him as a scout, me as infantry. Saw things no man should see. Did things... He stopped. War changes you. Makes you cold. Caroline brought him back from that. Now she's gone, and he's disappearing again. Selene thought about Dawson's careful control, the way he held everyone at arm's length. He's grieving. He's giving up. There's a difference. Walter stood, joints cracking. But maybe you'll pull him back. You've got steel in you. He needs that. He walked away before Selene could respond, heading toward his cabin with the unsteady gait of a man who'd spent more years drunk than sober. Emma appeared at her side. Is Grandpa okay? I think he's trying to be. He used to tell us stories about when Papa was little. Emma's voice was wistful. But he doesn't anymore. Maybe he will again someday. Maybe. They went back to their letters, but Selene's mind was elsewhere. She was starting to understand the weight Dawson carried, not just grief for his wife, but the responsibility of holding together a family that was fracturing in a dozen different ways. His father's drinking, the ranch's debt, the pressure from Henley, the town's judgment. No wonder he looked exhausted. That afternoon, while the girls napped, Selene went through the ranch accounts. She'd been avoiding them, knowing they weren't her business. But after last night, after Dawson's admission that she was holding things together, she needed to see the full picture. What she found was worse than she'd imagined. The drought had hit hard 2 years ago. Cattle had died, crops had failed, and Dawson had taken out loans to cover the losses. Then Caroline got sick. Medical bills piled up, more loans. When she died, Dawson had paid for a proper funeral. More debt. Now the loans were coming due, and there wasn't enough income to cover them. Without a miracle, the ranch would be foreclosed by spring. Selene sat back, stomach churning. How was Dawson functioning under this kind of pressure? How was he managing the day-to-day work while drowning in impossible debt? The answer, she realized, was that he wasn't managing. He was surviving, barely, one day at a time. She was still staring at the numbers when Dawson came in, dusty and exhausted from a day of fence repair. You're in my office. I looked at the accounts. His face went carefully blank. Did I give you permission to do that? No. But someone needed to see how bad things really are. She turned the ledger toward him. You're 3 months behind on loan payments. The bank's threatening foreclosure, and Henley knows it, doesn't he? That's why he's pushing so hard. Get out of my office. Dawson, I said get out. His voice cracked like a whip. Selene stood slowly. Hiding from the problem won't make it go away. I'm not hiding. I'm dealing with it my way. Your way isn't working. The words hung between them, harsh and true. Dawson's hands clenched into fists. You've been here a month, Miss Voss. 1 month. Don't stand there and tell me how to save a ranch I've been fighting for my entire life. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are. You're trying to fix things, just like you fix everything else. The house, the girls, my father. But this isn't something you can fix with elbow grease and determination. This is money and debt and problems bigger than both of us. Then let me help. How? The word was almost a shout. How exactly do you plan to help? You going to pull $10,000 out of thin air? Going to make it rain so the grass grows back? Going to bring Caroline back so I don't have to do all of this alone? The last word broke something in his voice. He turned away, shoulders rigid. Selene stood frozen. She'd never heard him mention his wife's name before, never seen him show this much emotion. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean to overstep. You're always overstepping. That's what you do. But the anger had gone out of his voice, leaving only exhaustion. Just leave the accounts alone, please. All right. She left him there, surrounded by ledgers that detailed his failure to save everything he'd built. Her throat felt tight, eyes stinging with frustrated tears she refused to shed. She wanted to help, wanted to find a solution, a way forward. But Dawson was right. She'd been here a month. What did she really know about running a ranch or negotiating with banks or fighting men like Victor Henley? That night, after the girls were asleep, she found herself back on the porch. The stars were out, bright and cold. She was so focused on the sky she didn't hear Dawson approach until he spoke. Can't sleep? She shook her head. He leaned against the railing beside her, maintaining careful distance. For a long moment, they stood in silence. I shouldn't have yelled, he said finally. You had a right to be angry. I invaded your privacy. You were trying to help. That doesn't make it okay. He sighed. Caroline used to say I carry everything alone because I don't trust anyone else to handle the weight. She was probably right. Was she like that? The kind of person who said hard truths? Yes. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Drove me crazy sometimes, but she was usually right. The smile faded. I don't talk about her much. With the girls, with anyone. It's easier that way. Easier, maybe, but not healthier. You sound like her now. Good. Someone needs to. Dawson looked at her, something complicated in his expression. The accounts you saw, that's not the full picture. I've got a plan. It's risky, but it might work. What kind of plan? There's a cattle drive heading north in 6 weeks. Big operation, going all the way to Montana. They're paying top dollar for experienced drovers willing to make the trip. 3 months on the trail, and I'd earn enough to clear most of the debt. Selene's stomach dropped. 3 months? I know it's a long time, but Tom Fletcher can manage the ranch while I'm gone, and you'd be here with the girls. He stopped, reading her expression. What? You're going to leave your daughters for 3 months? After everything they've been through? It's the only way to save the ranch. There has to be another way. There isn't. His voice was flat. I've looked at every option, Miss Voss. This is it. I take the drive, make the money, save the ranch. Or I stay here and watch Henley take everything. What if something happens to you out there? What if you don't come back? Then Tom becomes the girl's guardian, and you'll help him until they're old enough to decide their own futures. It's all in my will. Selene stared at him. You've planned for that, for dying and leaving them behind. I've planned for every contingency. That's what fathers do. Fathers stay alive. Fathers don't risk their lives on 3-month cattle drives through hostile territory. What would you have me do? There was real pain in his voice now. Stay here and watch the bank take the only home my daughters have ever known? Watch them grow up knowing I failed them? They'd rather have you than a house. They need both. Selene wanted to argue more, to shake him until he saw reason. But she could see the determination in his face, the desperation beneath it. He'd made up his mind. When do you leave? 6 weeks, right after the first snow. The girls will be devastated. I know. He looked away. But they'll understand eventually. When they're older, when they realize what I did to keep them safe. Selene wasn't so sure, but she bit her tongue. You'll need to tell them soon. Give them time to adjust. I will. And you'll write. Every chance you get. If I can, Not if. You will. She turned to face him fully. Those girls have already lost their mother. They can't lose you too, even temporarily, without knowing you're coming back. So you'll write, and you'll tell them you love them, and you'll make damn sure they know this isn't abandonment. Dawson met her eyes. You really care about them. Of course I do. Why? You barely know them. Selene thought about that, about Emma's trust and Sarah's quiet strength, and the way they both looked at her like she might actually stay. I know what it's like to be a child no one wants, she said quietly. I know how it feels to watch adults leave over and over, always wondering if you did something wrong. Those girls aren't going to feel that way, not while I'm here. Something shifted in Dawson's expression, recognition maybe, or understanding. You were in an orphanage. It wasn't a question. Selene nodded. How long? From birth until 18. Then they turned me out with $5 and a letter of reference for domestic work. That's why you know how to run a household so well. I learned young, had to. She looked out at the prairie. I spent years looking for a place to belong. Every family I worked for, I thought maybe this time it would be different. Maybe they'd want to keep me. But they never did. Until now. Until now, she agreed, though I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. It won't, not for me. Dawson's voice was firm. You do right by my daughters. I do right by you. That's the deal, and I keep my deals. Even if you have to leave for 3 months, I'll come back. I promise you that. Selene wanted to believe him, but she'd heard too many promises from too many people who'd broken them. Don't promise, she said. Just do it. Fair enough. They stood together in the dark, and despite everything, the debt, the threats, the looming cattle drive, Selene felt something settle inside her. This was her fight now, whether Dawson wanted her help or not. She was staying, and she was going to make damn sure this family survived, with or without Victor Henley's approval. The weeks that followed took on a strange rhythm. Dawson threw himself into preparation for the cattle drive with the kind of focus that shut out everything else. He worked from before dawn until after dark, checking cattle, repairing equipment, training the ranch hands who'd stay behind. Selene watched him run himself ragged and couldn't decide if she admired his determination or wanted to shake sense into him. The girls still didn't know. Every time Selene tried to bring it up, Dawson changed the subject or walked away. She knew he was putting it off because he didn't know how to say it, how to explain to 2 little girls that their father was leaving them for 3 months, barely half a year after their mother had died. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything went sideways. Selene was hanging laundry when she heard the wagon. Not the usual sound of ranch business. This was urgent. Horses pushed hard. She dropped the sheet she'd been pinning and ran around the house. Tom Fletcher was driving, face grim. In the back, Dawson lay unconscious, blood soaking through his shirt. What happened? Selene's voice came out steadier than she felt. Bull got him, gored his side before we could pull him clear. Tom was already jumping down. Need to get him inside. Between the 2 of them and another ranch hand named Pete, they managed to carry Dawson into the house and lay him on the kitchen table. Selene's hands were shaking as she cut away his shirt. The wound was bad, deep gash along his ribs, bleeding freely. Not life-threatening if they acted fast, but it needed cleaning and stitching. Someone get the doctor, she said. Doc's in Carson City. Won't be back until Friday. Tom's voice was rough. You know anything about doctoring? Selene thought about the orphanage, about the matron who'd taught her basic wound care, because girls in service needed to know these things. She'd stitched cuts before, treated fevers, set a broken finger once, but never anything like this. Get me clean water, whiskey, and the sewing kit from upstairs, she said. And keep the girls away. They don't need to see this. Tom moved fast. Pete hovered uselessly until Selene ordered him outside. By the time Tom returned, she'd cleared the table and assessed the wound properly. It was deep but clean. The bull's horn had sliced through skin and muscle but hadn't penetrated the abdominal wall. Painful as hell, would leave a nasty scar but survivable. If she could stop the bleeding. This is going to hurt, she said to Dawson's unconscious form. Then she poured whiskey directly into the wound. His eyes flew open and he screamed, a raw animal sound that made her stomach clench. Tom grabbed his shoulders, holding him down. Easy, boss. We got you. What? Dawson's face was gray with pain. His eyes found Selene's. What happened? You got gored. Hold still while I stitch this. No, the girls are upstairs with Walter. He's keeping them occupied. She threaded the needle with hands that had stopped shaking. Interesting how panic disappeared once you had a task. This is going to hurt worse than the whiskey. Can't hurt worse than... He cut off with another scream as she made the first stitch. Told you, she said grimly. It took 23 stitches to close the wound. By the end, Dawson had passed out again, which was probably a mercy. Selena's hands were covered in his blood, her dress ruined, and she felt like she might throw up. But the bleeding had stopped. He'll live? Tom asked. If infection doesn't set in, we need to watch him closely for the next few days. She washed her hands in the basin, watching red water swirl. Can you help me get him upstairs? They managed it, barely. Dawson's bedroom was sparse. Bed, dresser, one chair. Personal items were minimal. The only decoration was a photograph on the dresser, a woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. Caroline. They got him into bed. Selene covered him with blankets, checked his pulse. Still strong. I'll sit with him, she said. You sure? I'm sure. Go tell the girls their father's going to be fine. They're probably terrified. Tom nodded and left. Selene pulled the chair close to the bed and settled in to wait. Dawson woke an hour later, disoriented and in pain. Selene was ready with water and a dose of laudanum she'd found in the medicine cabinet. Drink this. He obeyed without arguing, which told her how much he was hurting. When he'd finished, he fell back against the pillows. The bull? Put down. Tom said it was the third time it had charged someone. Should have been done months ago. Needed the breeding stock. His voice was slurred from the laudanum. Can't afford to waste animals. You nearly died. Wouldn't be the first time. Selene wanted to hit him. You have daughters who need you alive. Stop being so reckless. Wasn't being reckless. Was doing my job. Your job doesn't require getting gored by bulls. He almost smiled. You should see the other guy. The other guy is being butchered for meat. You won. Congratulations. This time he did smile, though it was pained. You're angry. I'm furious. You scared 10 years off my life, and I had to stitch you back together on the kitchen table while your daughters cried upstairs. Her voice cracked. So yes, I'm angry. Sorry. Don't apologize. Just don't do it again. Can't promise that. Ranch work is dangerous. Then be more careful. She stood, checking his bandages, still clean. The cattle drive is off. What? You heard me. You can't make a 3-month journey in this condition. It's off. Dawson tried to sit up, gasped in pain, fell back. That's not your decision? Someone has to make it, and you're clearly not thinking straight. I heal fast. 6 weeks is plenty of time. 6 weeks is not enough time to recover from a wound like that. You'll tear the stitches, get an infection, and die somewhere in the middle of nowhere. She crossed her arms. Find another way to save the ranch. There is no other way. Then we'll think of one. Together. We, he repeated, bitter. There's that word again. This isn't your problem, Miss Voss. Yes, it is. Because if the ranch fails, those girls lose their home. And I'll be damned if I let that happen without a fight. She sat back down, leaning forward. You don't have to do this alone, Dawson. Stop acting like you do. He looked at her for a long moment. The laudanum was making his eyes heavy, his walls coming down. Caroline used to say the same thing, he said quietly. I never listened to her either. Maybe you should have. Yeah. His eyes drifted closed. Maybe I should have. He fell asleep mid-sentence. Selene sat watching him breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavier on her shoulders. She'd meant what she said. She would find another way to save this ranch. She just had no idea how. The next 3 days were brutal. Dawson ran a fever that spiked and fell unpredictably. Selene barely left his side, sponging his forehead with cool water, checking his wound for signs of infection, forcing water and broth down his throat when he was conscious enough to swallow. The girls wanted to see him, but she kept them away. They didn't need to see their father like this, delirious and weak, calling out for Caroline in his sleep. On the 4th day, the fever broke. Selene woke slumped in the chair beside his bed, neck cramping. Dawn light was filtering through the window. Dawson was watching her, eyes clear for the first time in days. How long have I been out? 3 days. Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. How do you feel? Like I got gored by a bull. Accurate. She stood, stretching. I need to check your wound. He didn't argue as she unwrapped the bandages. The stitches were holding, no signs of infection. The skin around the wound was angry red, but healing. You did good work, he said. I did adequate work. A real doctor would have done better. A real doctor wasn't here. You were. He caught her wrist as she reached for fresh bandages. Thank you. The touch startled her. His hand was warm, calloused, gentle. She pulled away quickly. You're welcome. She finished rebandaging in silence. When she was done, Dawson said, The girls. Are they scared but managing? Walter's been telling them stories, keeping them distracted. Tom's been handling the ranch work. Everything's fine. Nothing's fine. I'm stuck in bed when I should be working. You're stuck in bed because you almost died. Give yourself time to heal. I don't have time. But his voice lacked conviction. The fever had taken more out of him than he wanted to admit. Selene went to the door, paused. I'll send the girls up. They need to see you're alive. Wait. Dawson struggled to sit up, winced. I need to tell them. About the drive. You can't go on the drive. I know. The admission seemed to cost him, but they need to know what was supposed to happen, why I was pushing so hard. Are you sure you want to do this now? If I wait, I'll lose my nerve. Selene nodded and went to get the girls. They thundered up the stairs, faces lighting up when they saw their father awake. Emma launched herself at the bed before Selene could stop her. Careful, his side, but Dawson was already pulling Emma into a gentle hug, reaching for Sarah with his other arm. Both girls burrowed against him, trying not to cry. I'm okay, babies. I'm okay. You were bleeding so much, Emma sobbed, and you kept calling for Mama. I know. I'm sorry I scared you. He looked at Selene over their heads. She nodded and quietly left, closing the door behind her. She didn't hear what he told them, but 20 minutes later, when she brought up breakfast, both girls were crying and Dawson looked gutted. We'll talk more later, he was saying, but I promise, I'm not going anywhere right now, all right? They nodded, still clinging to him. Selene set down the tray and herded the girls toward the door. Let your father eat and rest. You can visit again this afternoon. Downstairs, she made them wash their faces and sit down for their own breakfast. Neither one ate much. Is Papa really not leaving? Sarah asked quietly. Not for a while. He needs to heal first. But he said we might lose the ranch. Emma's voice was small. What does that mean? Selene chose her words carefully. It means your father has some financial difficulties he's trying to solve, but losing the ranch isn't certain. We're going to figure something out. Can we help? The question broke Selene's heart. Just by being yourselves. That's all the help he needs. But later, after the girls were occupied with their lessons, Selene found herself back in Dawson's office, staring at those damning ledgers. There had to be another way. Something they were missing. She spent hours going through the accounts, making notes, calculating. The numbers were grim, no matter how she arranged them. Without the cattle drive money, they'd be foreclosed by spring. Unless... An idea started forming. Crazy, probably impossible, but an idea nonetheless. That evening, she brought dinner to Dawson's room. He was sitting up, color better, though he still moved carefully. I've been thinking, she said without preamble. That sounds dangerous. The cattle drive is off. We agree on that? He sighed. Yes. I can't make the trip in this condition. Good. So we need another solution. She set down the tray and pulled out her notes. I've been through the accounts. The ranch is still viable. You've got good cattle, decent water rights, prime grazing land. The problem is cash flow and debt service. I'm aware. What if we diversified, added revenue streams that don't require you to risk your life? Dawson raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The house is large. We could take in boarders, respectable ones, maybe teachers or merchants passing through. $20 a month per room, meals included. No one's going to pay $20 to stay in the middle of nowhere. They will if the alternative is the boarding house in town, which charges $15 for a room with bed bugs and no meals. She consulted her notes. We've got 3 empty bedrooms upstairs. That's $60 a month if we can keep them full. That's not enough to cover the debt. No, but it helps. And there's more. The ranch hands eat in the bunkhouse, but they'd pay for better food. Home cooking instead of whatever Pete burns on the stove. $5 a month per man, 5 men. That's another 25. Dawson was starting to look interested despite himself. Go on. The garden is wasted space. We could expand it, sell vegetables in town. And the chickens? We could double the flock, sell eggs. Small money, but it adds up. She leaned forward. None of this requires you to leave. None of it risks your life. And all of it uses resources we already have. You've really thought this through. Someone had to. He studied her. This would mean more work for you. A lot more work. I'm not afraid of work. And you'd be managing boarders, feeding ranch hands, running a market garden on top of the household, and the girls. He shook his head. That's too much for one person. Then we hire help. A girl from town to assist with cooking and cleaning. Pay her $8 a month. That cuts into the profits. Not as much as you dying on a cattle drive. She held his gaze. This can work, Dawson, but only if you let me try. He was quiet for a long moment. You're asking me to bet the ranch on boarders and eggs. I'm asking you to bet on something you can actually control. The cattle drive was a gamble, too. Weather, bandits, market prices. At least this way you're here for your daughters. And if it doesn't work, if we can't make enough, then we try something else. But we try together. That word again. Together. It seemed to hang in the air between them. Finally, Dawson nodded. All right. We'll try it your way. But if this fails, it won't fail. You don't know that. No, Selene admitted. But I know I'm going to work like hell to make sure it doesn't. A small smile tugged at his mouth. You're stubborn as a mule, you know that? I've been called worse. I bet you have. He picked up his fork, started eating. When do we start? Tomorrow. I'll go to town, place an advertisement for boarders and for a girl to help with housework. We'll expand the chicken coop this week, start the garden next month when the weather turns. The ranch hands I'll talk to directly, see who's interested in better meals. You've got this all planned out. Someone has to. He shook his head, but he was still smiling. Fine, but you're not doing the heavy work on the chicken coop. I'll have Tom and Pete handle it. You'll rest and heal. That's your only job. Yes, ma'am. It was the first time he'd sounded even remotely relaxed in weeks. Selene felt something loosen in her chest. They could do this. They had to. The next morning, Selene went to town with her advertisement written in careful script. She posted it at the general store, the post office, and the church notice board. Rooms for rent, meals included, quiet ranch setting. Inquire at Creed Ranch. By the time she returned, 3 people had already shown interest. Word traveled fast in small towns, apparently. The first prospective boarder arrived that afternoon. A school teacher named Miss Adelaide Porter, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. I need quiet for lesson planning and a place away from town gossip, she said bluntly. Can you provide that? Yes. And the room has a lock? Every room has a lock. How many other boarders? Potentially 2. All respectable, all screened. Adelaide looked around the main room, taking in the clean floors, the neat kitchen, the general air of order. Show me the room. Selene led her upstairs to the largest of the spare bedrooms, south-facing, good light, spacious. Adelaide inspected it thoroughly, checking the bed, the window lock, the water pitcher. I'll take it. $20 a month, first week's rent in advance to hold the room. They shook hands. Selene had her first boarder. The second came 2 days later, a traveling salesman named Mr. Garrett who needed somewhere to stay while he worked the territory. He was older, quiet, and primarily interested in whether the food was decent. My wife can cook, Selene said. It wasn't technically a lie. She was like a wife to this household, even if the paperwork disagreed. Then we have a deal. By the end of the week, Selene had 3 boarders committed, 2 ranch hands willing to pay for better meals, and a girl named Lucy from town who desperately needed work. Lucy was 17, plain-faced and eager, with hands that knew hard work. Her father had died the previous year, leaving her mother with debts and 3 younger children. I can cook, clean, mend, and I don't mind long hours, Lucy said during her interview. I need this job, Miss Voss. We need the money. Selene hired her on the spot. Within 2 weeks, the house was transformed. Adelaide Porter moved into the south bedroom and kept to herself, which was perfect. Mr. Garrett took the east room and spent most of his time on the road. The third boarder, a bank clerk named Mr. Winters, who was temporarily assigned to Blackthorn Ridge, took the west room and mostly read in his spare time. The ranch hands started taking meals in the house, trading awkward jokes and shy smiles for Lucy's beef stew and Celine's biscuits. The chicken coop doubled in size, and eggs began selling in town faster than Selene could collect them. Money started coming in. Not a flood, but a steady trickle that actually covered expenses with a little left over for debt payments. For the first time in months, the ledger showed progress instead of decline. Dawson healed slowly, frustrated by his limitations but forced to rest by Celine's stubborn insistence and his daughter's worried eyes. He watched Selene transform the household into a functioning business with something that looked like amazement. "You're a miracle worker," he said one evening, watching her manage dinner service for 9 people with Lucy's help. "I'm a hard worker. There's a difference." "How are you doing all this?" "By not sleeping much and drinking too much coffee." She wiped her hands on her apron. "But it's working. That's what matters." "You look exhausted." "So do you." "I got gored by a bull. What's your excuse?" "Keeping this household from falling apart." But she was smiling. "Selene." He rarely used her first name. It made her pause. "Thank you for all of this." "You're welcome." She turned back to the stove, but not before she saw the expression on his face. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something that made her heart beat faster. She pushed the feeling away. There was too much work to do, too much at stake. Whatever was growing between them would have to wait. But late that night, after everyone was asleep and the house was finally quiet, Selene stood at her bedroom window and let herself acknowledge the truth. She was falling for Dawson Creed. It was foolish, dangerous, completely impractical. He was still grieving his wife. She was just the housekeeper. And there were 100 reasons why acting on these feelings would destroy everything she'd built here. But standing in the dark, watching the prairie stretch endlessly under starlight, Selene couldn't quite bring herself to regret it. Because for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Like she was building something that mattered, with people who needed her as much as she needed them. And if that came with complicated feelings for a damaged cowboy with gray eyes and a wounded heart, well, she dealt with worse. The trouble came, as it always did, from Victor Henley. Selene was in town buying supplies when Martha Henley cornered her outside the general store. This time she wasn't alone. 3 other town women flanked her, all wearing identical expressions of righteous disapproval. "Miss Voss, we need to speak with you." "I'm rather busy, Mrs. Henley." "This won't take long." Martha stepped closer. "We've been hearing disturbing reports about the goings-on at the Creed Ranch." "What kind of reports?" "Multiple unrelated men staying in the house. A young unmarried woman in charge. Children exposed to She lowered her voice. "Inappropriate situations." Selene felt ice in her veins. Those are boarders. Respectable boarders in a respectable household. That's not how it looks to decent people. Then decent people should find better ways to occupy their time than inventing scandals where none exist. "There's no need to be defensive, dear. We're simply concerned about those poor motherless girls." Martha's smile was poisonous. "Perhaps they'd be better off in a more appropriate environment. I know several families who would be happy to take them in." The threat was clear. Selene's hands clenched into fists. Those girls are exactly where they belong, with their father on their family ranch. A father who nearly died in an accident, who's drowning in debt, who allows unmarried women and strange men to live under the same roof as his young daughters. Martha ticked off each point on her fingers. The sheriff might be interested in conducting a welfare check. For the children's sake, of course. "Of course," Selene's voice was ice. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with your husband wanting to force Dawson off his land." Martha's smile never wavered. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Don't you? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like harassment, slander, attempted interference with a private household." Selene stepped closer. "And if you or your husband try to take those girls away from their father, I will fight you with everything I have. You're just the housekeeper. I'm the person those girls trust. The person who kept that household running while Dawson recovered. The person who turned a failing ranch into a profitable business in 3 weeks." Selene's voice was deadly quiet now. So yes, I'm the housekeeper, but I'm also the biggest obstacle between you and what you want. Remember that. She pushed past Martha and the other women, heart pounding with rage and fear. Behind her, she heard whispers, but she didn't care. Let them talk. She had work to do. But that night when she told Dawson what had happened, his face went dark. They threatened to take the girls. They implied it. There's a difference. Not much of one. He was up and pacing, despite Celine's protests about his healing wound. If Henley gets the sheriff involved, if they start questioning my fitness as a father, they won't have a case. The ranch is thriving. The girls are healthy, happy, well cared for. Any investigation would show that. You don't know how these things work. Men like Henley, they have influence. They can make things look however they want. Then we make sure there's nothing to find. Selene stood, blocking his path. We run this household so cleanly, so properly, that no one can question it. The boarders are all respectable. Lucy's a proper chaperone. Everything is documented, accounted for. And if that's not enough, then we fight. She met his eyes. Together. There was that word again, but this time Dawson didn't flinch from it. You really mean that? Every word. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was achingly gentle. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. Probably not. But she was smiling. Good thing I'm stubborn. Yeah? His hand lingered near her face. Good thing. For a moment they stood frozen, close enough that Selene could feel his breath on her skin. Then footsteps on the stairs made them jump apart. Emma appeared, rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream. Come here, baby. Dawson scooped her up, wincing only slightly. Let's get you back to bed. He carried her upstairs, leaving Selene alone in the kitchen with her heart racing and her face burning. This was getting complicated, more complicated than she'd ever intended. But as she cleaned up and locked the house for the night, Selene couldn't bring herself to wish things were different. Complicated was better than empty. And for the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for. The storm arrived 3 days before Christmas, announced by a sky gone the color of old bruises and wind that made the windows rattle in their frames. Selene stood on the porch, watching clouds pile up on the horizon like mountains, dark and threatening. Going to be a bad one, Tom said, coming up beside her. Radio says it could last 3 days, maybe more. The cattle? Bringing them in closer to the barn now. We'll lose some if they scatter, but there's only so much we can do. He pulled his hat down tighter. Boss should stay inside. That wound of his isn't fully healed, and cold like this'll make it worse. Try telling him that, Tom snorted. You tell him. He listens to you. Did he? Selene wasn't sure about that. Dawson had been strange since the night in the kitchen, carefully polite but distant, like he'd realized how close they'd gotten and decided to rebuild his walls. The first snow started falling around noon, fat flakes that came down lazy at first, then faster. By evening, it was a full blizzard, wind howling like something alive and angry. Adelaide Porter came down for dinner looking worried. I've never seen weather like this. Welcome to frontier winter, Selene said, serving stew. It gets worse before it gets better. Mr. Garrett and Mr. Winters ate quickly and retreated to their rooms. The ranch hands took their portions to the bunkhouse, heads bent against the wind. Lucy stayed to help clean up, eyes darting nervously to the windows. My ma's alone with the little ones, she said. I should go check on them. You'll freeze before you make it halfway to town. Selene put a hand on her shoulder. They'll be fine. Your mother knows how to manage. But no buts. You're staying here tonight. We'll check on them when the storm passes. Lucy nodded reluctantly. Selene made up a pallet for her in the kitchen, the warmest room in the house. Then she checked on the girls, already asleep, curled together under extra blankets, and went looking for Dawson. She found him in the barn checking on the horses. Snow had blown in through gaps in the walls, and his breath fogged in the frigid air. You should be inside, she said. So should you. I came to get you. It's dangerous out here. It's dangerous everywhere. But he followed her back to the house, moving stiffly. The cold was bothering his injury, just like Tom had predicted. Inside, Selene poured him coffee and pointed at the chair nearest the fire. Sit. I'm fine. You're limping. Sit down before you fall down. He sat, mostly because arguing took energy he didn't have. Selene knelt and checked his side, pulling up his shirt to examine the scar. It was red and tight from the cold, but not infected. You need to stay warm. This weather isn't good for healing wounds. Yes, doctor. But there was no heat in it. They sat in silence, listening to the wind scream. After a while, Dawson said, "We're going to lose cattle. Maybe a lot of them." I know. Shit. All this work, all these plans, and one storm could wipe it out. Or it could pass and everything will be fine. You don't know yet. He shook his head. You're an optimist. And you're a pessimist. We balance each other out. That almost got a smile. Maybe. The wind picked up, rattling the entire house. Something crashed outside, a shutter torn loose maybe, or part of the fence. Dawson started to stand, but Selene pushed him back down. You're not going out there. Whatever it is can wait until morning. If the barn roof comes off, then we'll fix it in daylight. You're not dying in a blizzard because you're too stubborn to wait. I'm not going to die. That's what you said before the bull gored you. He went quiet. She'd scored a point, and they both knew it. The night dragged on. Around midnight, the temperature dropped so sharply that frost formed on the inside of the windows. Selene brought down every spare blanket they had and distributed them to the boarders. Lucy was shivering in the kitchen despite being near the stove. Sleep in my room, Selene told her. It's warmer than down here. Where will you sleep? I'll manage. She settled Lucy upstairs, checked on the girls again, then came back down to find Dawson still sitting by the fire. You should sleep too, she said. Can't. Need to keep the fire going. I can do that. So can I. They were both too stubborn to back down, so they ended up sitting together, taking turns feeding wood into the fire and listening to the storm rage. Around 3 a.m, exhaustion finally caught up with Selene and she dozed off in her chair. She woke to find herself covered with a blanket that hadn't been there before. Dawson was across from her, still awake, watching the fire. You should have woken me, she said. You needed rest. So do you. I'll rest when the storm's over. Selene wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Instead, she just watched him in the firelight, the sharp lines of his face, the shadows under his eyes, the careful way he held himself to protect his injured side. Why do you do this? She asked quietly. Do what? Carry everything alone, even when people want to help. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father was a drunk. My mother left when I was 8. I learned early that if I wanted something done, I had to do it myself. That must have been lonely. It was survival. He poked at the fire. Then I met Caroline, and for a while I thought maybe I could be different. Let someone in. But when she died, his voice cracked slightly. I couldn't protect her, couldn't save her. And I realized nothing had really changed. I'm still that kid who can't count on anyone but himself. Selene's throat felt tight. You can count on me. Can I? You've been here, 2 months? What happens when you decide this life is too hard, too isolated, too... I'm not leaving, she said it fiercely. I told you that before and I meant it. I'm not your mother. I'm not the housekeepers who quit. I'm here, and I'm staying, and you need to start believing that. Dawson looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Why? Why do you care so much about this broken family and this failing ranch? Because it's mine too now. The words came out raw, honest. Because your daughters call me when they have nightmares. Because I know every creaky floorboard in this house, and which chickens lay the most eggs, and how you take your coffee. Because when I think about leaving, I can't breathe. The silence that followed was heavy with things neither of them was quite ready to say. Finally, Dawson said, Your coffee's terrible, by the way. Selene laughed, surprised. What? You make it too weak. I just drink it because you made it. You could have said something. Didn't want to hurt your feelings. My feelings can handle honest feedback about coffee. Good to know. He was almost smiling. I'll make it tomorrow. Show you how it's done. Deal. They sat together as the storm raged and the night slowly bled into dawn. And somewhere in those quiet hours, something shifted between them. Not fixed, not resolved, but acknowledged. They were in this together, whether Dawson wanted to admit it or not. Morning came gray and bitter. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it had gotten worse. Dawson went to check on the barn while Selene started breakfast for a house full of anxious people. He came back 20 minutes later, face grim. Barn roof's holding, but barely, and we've got about 2 feet of snow with more coming. The cattle? Don't know. Can't see far enough to check. The day crawled past. Adelaide kept to her room. Mr. Garrett paced like a caged animal. Mr. Winters read the same page of his book over and over. The girls were restless, asking when they could go outside, not understanding why the answer was no. By the second day, cabin fever had set in hard. Tempers were short, supplies were running low, and the wind showed no signs of stopping. That's when Sarah disappeared. Selene noticed first. She'd gone upstairs to check on the girls and found only Emma, playing with her doll. "Where's your sister?" "She said she was going to the privy." "When?" "A while ago." Celine's stomach dropped. She ran downstairs, checked the privy. Empty. Checked the barn. No sign of her. Started calling Sarah's name, getting more frantic with each passing second. Dawson heard the commotion and came running. "What's wrong?" "Sarah's missing. Emma said she went to the privy, but she's not there. She's not anywhere." "When?" "I don't know. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe more." 20 minutes in this storm was a death sentence for a 6-year-old. Dawson was already moving, grabbing his coat and hat. Tom appeared from the bunkhouse, then Pete. Within minutes, they'd organized a search, ropes tied around waists to keep from getting lost in the whiteout. "I'm coming with you," Selene said. "No, stay with Emma." "Dawson, please." His eyes were desperate. "I can't lose both of them. Stay here, keep Emma safe." She wanted to argue, wanted to help, but she could see the terror in his face. So she nodded and watched him disappear into the storm with Tom and Pete, 3 dark figures swallowed almost instantly by white. Emma was crying. "Is Sarah going to die like Mama?" "No." Selene pulled her close. "Your father will find her. He won't let anything happen to her." But 20 minutes turned to 30, then 45. The men's voices grew fainter, more desperate. Selene kept Emma by the fire and prayed to whoever might be listening that they'd find Sarah alive. She was putting on her own coat. Damn what Dawson said. She was going out there. When she heard it, a small sound, a whimper, coming from inside the house. Selene ran to the pantry and threw open the door. Sarah was huddled in the corner behind a barrel of flour, face streaked with tears, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "Sarah, what are you doing in here?" I was hiding." The words came out broken. From the storm." "Oh, sweetheart." Selene scooped her up, wrapping her in her coat. "Why didn't you answer when we called?" "I fell asleep. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "Shh. You're safe. That's all that matters." She ran to the door and screamed for Dawson, waving her arms. Through the snow, she saw him turn, saw him start running. He burst through the door 30 seconds later, covered in snow, face wild. When he saw Sarah in Selene's arms, his knees nearly gave out. "She was in the pantry," Selene said quickly. "She got scared and hid. She fell asleep. She's fine." Dawson took Sarah from her, holding his daughter so tight it had to hurt. But Sarah just buried her face in his neck and sobbed. "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm sorry." "Shh. It's okay, baby. You're okay." Tom and Pete stumbled in behind him, equally relieved. The search was over. Everyone was safe. But Selene could see the toll it had taken on Dawson. The gray cast to his skin, the way his hands shook as he held Sarah. He'd been ready to die out there looking for her. That was love. Fierce, desperate, all-consuming love. And watching him with his daughter, Selene felt her heart crack open completely. She loved them. All of them. This broken, struggling family that had become hers without her even realizing it. The storm finally broke on the 3rd day. The wind died, the snow stopped, and weak sunlight struggled through the clouds. Dawson went out with the ranch hands to assess the damage. They'd lost 15 head of cattle. Part of the north fence was down. The chicken coop had collapsed under the weight of snow, though the chickens had survived. The garden was buried. It could have been worse. Much worse, but it was still a blow to their carefully balanced finances. "We can rebuild," Selene said that evening, going over the numbers. "The border income is steady. The eggs are selling. We'll make it work." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Dawson looked at her across the kitchen table, and his expression was complicated. "You really believe we can save this place?" I know we can. Even after everything, the threats, the storm, the losses, especially after everything. She met his eyes. We've survived worse. We'll survive this too. He reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was simple, but it felt monumental. I don't know what I would have done without you, he said quietly. These past months, you've held us together, all of us. That's what family does. Is that what we are? Family? Selene thought about Emma calling her when she had nightmares, about Sarah hiding behind her when strangers came to the door, about sitting up all night with Dawson, watching the fire and talking about everything and nothing. Yes, she said, that's what we are. Dawson's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Caroline wouldn't have liked you. The statement was so unexpected that Selene laughed. What? She wouldn't have liked you. You're too stubborn, too independent. She preferred people she could manage. He smiled slightly. But she would have respected the hell out of you. I wish I could have known her. She would have seen you as competition, for the girl's affection, I mean. He paused. But I think eventually she would have seen what I see. What's that? That you love them as much as she did. Maybe in different ways, but just as much. Selene's eyes stung. I do love them. I know. His voice dropped. And A crash from upstairs cut him off. They both jumped up, the moment broken. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, looking sheepish. Sorry, I knocked over the water pitcher. By the time they'd cleaned up the mess and settled the girls back to sleep, the conversation didn't resume. Dawson said goodnight and went to his room, leaving Selene alone with her racing heart and her unfinished questions. What had he been about to say? She told herself it didn't matter. They had enough to deal with without adding complicated feelings to the mix. But late that night, lying in bed and listening to the house settle, Selene couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her across the table, like she was something precious, something worth holding on to. And despite every practical reason to guard her heart, she found herself hoping. The week after the storm, Victor Henley made his move. He showed up at the ranch with the sheriff and 2 deputies, all of them wearing official expressions. Selene met them at the door. Can I help you? We're here to conduct a welfare check, Sheriff Morrison said. He looked uncomfortable. There have been complaints about the living conditions here. From who? That's confidential. Let me guess. Martha Henley. The sheriff's expression confirmed it. Behind him, Victor Henley smiled. We just want to make sure the children are being properly cared for, Henley said smoothly. Surely you don't object to that. Selene wanted to slam the door in their faces. Instead, she stepped back. Come in. Look around. You won't find anything wrong. They searched the house top to bottom while Dawson stood silent and furious, fists clenched at his sides. They checked the girls' room, the kitchen, even the boarders' rooms. Adelaide was indignant. Mr. Garrett was outraged. Mr. Winters just looked bewildered. After an hour, Sheriff Morrison pulled off his hat and sighed. Everything looks fine, Miss Voss. The children are clean, well-fed, properly housed. I don't see any cause for concern. Of course you don't, Selene said coldly, because there isn't any. Henley's smile never wavered. Well, that's a relief, though I do have some concerns about unmarried men and women living under the same roof with young children. Hardly proper. They're boarders, Dawson said, speaking for the first time. Paying guests in separate rooms. There's nothing improper about it. Still, Henley looked around the room. It creates appearances. And appearances matter, Mr. Creed. Perhaps if you were to marry Miss Voss, that would put these concerns to rest. The suggestion hung in the air like a bomb. Selene felt her face go hot. Dawson's expression was murderous. Get out of my house, Dawson said quietly. I'm only thinking of the children. Get out. The sheriff and his deputies left quickly, clearly wanting no part of whatever was about to happen. But Henley lingered at the door. My offer still stands, Creed. Sell me the ranch, take the money, start fresh somewhere else. It's the smart move. I'd rather die than sell to you. That can be arranged. Henley tipped his hat. Think about it. You've got until spring. He left. The door closed behind him with a final sounding click. Dawson stood frozen, breathing hard. Selene wanted to say something, anything, but words failed her. Finally, he turned to her. I'm sorry. That suggestion, what he implied, it's fine. It's not fine. He made it sound like you. He couldn't finish. I know what he was implying. Selene kept her voice steady. And we both know it's not true. Right, of course. But something in his expression looked almost disappointed. They didn't speak about it again. But the suggestion lingered, changing something between them, making them both hyper-aware of proprieties, of distance, of all the ways their situation could be misunderstood. That night, Selene lay awake thinking about Henley's words. Marry Miss Voss. Like it was a business transaction, a solution to a problem. Not a real marriage, not based on love or choice or mutual respect. But wasn't that all marriage was for people like her? A transaction, a means to security. She'd spent years watching girls at the orphanage marry men they barely knew just to escape poverty. Watched her employers treat marriage like a contract, negotiated and executed with cold precision. Love was for rich people who could afford to be romantic. So why did the thought of marrying Dawson as a practical arrangement make her chest ache? She knew why. Because she'd been foolish enough to want more. To want him to choose her, not because it solved a problem, but because he couldn't imagine his life without her, and that was never going to happen. Selene rolled over, punched her pillow, and ordered herself to stop being ridiculous. She had a good job, a safe place to live, and 2 girls who needed her. That was enough. It had to be enough. But deep down, in a place she tried hard to ignore, she knew it wasn't, not anymore. Spring came late that year, arriving in fits and starts like it couldn't quite commit. One day the prairie was still frozen, the next it was mud and emerging grass and wildflowers pushing through the thaw. Selene watched the seasons change from the kitchen window and felt time running out. Henley's deadline was approaching. The ranch finances were better, but not good enough. Not yet. They'd made progress on the debt, but spring meant loan payments were due, and the numbers still didn't add up. Dawson knew it. She could see it in the way he stared at the ledgers late at night, in the tension that never left his shoulders. He was working himself to exhaustion again, trying to squeeze money from stones, and they still weren't talking about what Henley had said. The word marriage hung between them like smoke, visible but untouchable. It was Emma who finally forced the issue. Selene was teaching the girls their letters one afternoon when Emma looked up from her slate and said, "Miss Voss, are you going to be our mama?" Selene's heart stopped. "What makes you ask that?" "The ladies in town were talking. They said Papa should marry you so people would stop gossiping." Emma's face was hopeful. "I think it's a good idea." "Me too," Sarah said quietly. It was rare for her to volunteer an opinion. "You're already like our mama anyway." Selene didn't know what to say. Her throat felt too tight for words. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart." "Why?" Emma's logic was 6-year-old simple. "You live here. You take care of us. Papa likes you. Don't you like him?" "Of course I like him, but marriage isn't just about liking someone." "Mama always said marriage was about choosing your family." Emma tilted her head. "Haven't you already chosen us?" Out of the mouths of children, Selene felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "I have chosen you. Both of you." "Then why can't you marry Papa and stay forever?" "Because your father doesn't love me that way. Because I'm just the housekeeper who happened to be useful. Because real life isn't a fairy tale where the poor girl gets the happy ending." But she couldn't say any of that to 2 hopeful 6-year-olds. "It's complicated," she repeated. "Now finish your letters." That night, she found Dawson in the barn, checking on a mare about to foal. He looked up when she entered, and something in her expression made him set down his tools. "What's wrong?" "The girls asked me today if I was going to be their mother." Dawson went very still. "What did you tell them?" "That it was complicated. But Dawson—" She moved closer. "We need to talk about this. About what Henley said, about what people are saying, about what we're actually doing here. We're running a household, raising children, keeping a ranch afloat." "We're playing house," Selene said bluntly, "and everyone knows it, the boarders, the town, the girls, everyone except us, apparently. What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me the truth. Do you want me to leave? Is that what you're hoping for? That eventually I'll get tired and go away and you can go back to doing everything alone?" "No." The word was fierce. "That's not what I want at all." "Then what do you want?" Dawson ran a hand through his hair, looking cornered. I don't know. Since Caroline died, I haven't let myself want anything except survival, getting through each day, keeping the girls safe. And now? Now I'm terrified. He met her eyes. Because I do want things. I want you to stay. I want my daughters to have a mother again. I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning every single day. But wanting those things feels like betraying Caroline. Celine's heart ached for him. Wanting to be happy again isn't betrayal, isn't it? She's been gone less than a year, and I'm already thinking about... He stopped, jaw clenched. About what? About you. The words came out raw. About how you look in the morning light. About your terrible coffee and your stubborn pride and the way you make my daughters laugh. About how this house felt empty before you came, and now I can't imagine it without you. Selene couldn't breathe. Dawson! I'm not good at this. At feelings, at talking about them. Caroline used to say I had the emotional range of a fence post. He stepped closer. But you need to know what Henley suggested about marriage. It's not a terrible idea. A business arrangement, Selene said, trying to keep her voice steady, to stop the gossip. Is that what you think I'm suggesting? Isn't it? No. He reached out, cupped her face in his rough hands. I'm suggesting that maybe we stop pretending this is temporary. Stop pretending we're just employer and employee. Stop pretending we haven't already become a family. You're talking about a real marriage. I'm talking about making official what's already true. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I know it's fast. I know people will talk. But Selene, I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel, and I think you feel it too. She did. She'd been feeling it for months, pushing it down, telling herself it was foolish. But standing here with his hands on her face and his eyes searching hers, she couldn't pretend anymore. I love your daughters, she said. I know. And I think I might love you too. His breath caught. You think? I'm terrible at this too. At vulnerability, at trusting people not to leave. She put her hands over his. But yes, I love you. I've probably loved you since you yelled at me about the ledgers. He laughed, surprised. That's when you knew? That's when I knew you cared enough to be angry, that underneath all that control you were human. She smiled through tears. A stubborn, impossible, emotionally constipated human, but human nonetheless. Emotionally constipated? You have the emotional range of a fence post, remember? Your wife said so. She did say that. He pulled Selene closer until their foreheads touched. Will you marry me anyway? Are you asking because it solves a problem or because you want to? Both. Is that allowed? Selene thought about it. About how life was messy and complicated and rarely looked like the stories in books. About how love didn't always arrive at convenient times or in perfect circumstances. Sometimes it arrived in train stations at midnight. Sometimes it grew in the space between coffee cups and accounting ledgers. Sometimes it was built from necessity and desperation and two broken people deciding to fix each other. Yes, she said, that's allowed. So is that a yes? You'll marry me? On one condition. Name it. You stop trying to do everything alone. We're partners. Actually partners. You don't make decisions without me. You don't hide problems from me. And you definitely don't take any more cattle drive jobs without discussing it first. Deal. He smiled and it transformed his whole face. Anything else? Teach me to make coffee that doesn't taste like dishwater. That I can do. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Selene kissed him back and felt years of loneliness and fear crack open and fall away. This was what belonging felt like. Not perfect, not smooth, but real. When they finally pulled apart, Dawson said, "The girls are going to lose their minds. Emma will. Sarah will probably just nod like she expected this all along." Smart kid. They both are. Selene laced her fingers through his. Are we really doing this? Unless you've changed your mind in the last 30 seconds. No, She laughed shakily. I came to Blackthorn Ridge with nothing. No money, no prospects, no hope. And now I'm about to marry a cowboy rancher and become a mother to two girls I'd die for. It's surreal. Welcome to my life. Everything's surreal these days. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's go tell them before Emma bursts from curiosity. They told the girls that night after dinner. Emma shrieked and threw herself at Selene, nearly knocking her over. Sarah smiled, actually smiled, wide and genuine, and said, "I knew it." "How did you know?" Dawson asked. "You look at her the same way you looked at Mama, like she's the sun." Dawson's eyes went suspiciously bright. He pulled both girls into a hug, then reached out to include Selene. They stood there in a tangle of arms and love, and Selene felt something settle in her chest. Home. This was home. They married 2 weeks later in a quiet ceremony at the ranch. Adelaide Porter and Tom Fletcher stood as witnesses. The girls wore their best dresses and couldn't stop giggling. Even Walter showed up sober, wearing a clean shirt and something that might have been pride in his eyes. "You're good for him," he told Selene before the ceremony. "Don't let him retreat into that shell of his." "I won't. And thank you for not giving up on this family." "Thank you for not running me off when I first arrived." Walter snorted. "I thought about it. You were too mouthy for your own good." "Still am." "Good. He needs mouthy." Walter paused. "Caroline was good for him, too. Different from you, but good. She'd be glad you're here. Just so you know." It was the closest thing to a blessing Selene was going to get from him, and it meant more than she could say. The ceremony itself was simple. No fancy dress, no elaborate decorations, just Selene in her best blue cotton and Dawson in a clean shirt, standing in front of the fireplace while Tom read the vows. The girls held hands and watched with shining eyes. When Dawson slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, his mother's ring, he'd told her, one of the few things his father hadn't sold, Selene felt the last piece of her fractured life click into place. "You may kiss your bride," Tom said, grinning. Dawson did, thoroughly, while the girls cheered and Adelaide pretended to be scandalized. Afterward, there was cake that Lucy had baked and coffee that Dawson made, strong enough to put hair on your chest, he claimed, and toast that got progressively more sentimental as the evening wore on. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect. It was theirs. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was finally quiet, Selene stood at her bedroom window, their bedroom now, strange to think, and looked out at the prairie. Dawson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Regrets?" "Not a single one." "Good." He rested his chin on her shoulder. "Because you're stuck with me now. Stuck with all of you, the girls, the ranch, the debt, the town gossip, everything. It's a lot. I can handle it." "I know you can." He turned her to face him. "But you don't have to handle it alone anymore. That was the deal, remember?" "I remember," she smiled. "Partners." "Partners," he agreed. They stood together in the dark, and Selene felt something she'd never felt before. Certainty. Not about the future, not about whether the ranch would survive or whether Henley would give up his vendetta, but certainty about this. About them. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The confrontation with Henley came 3 days after the wedding. He showed up at the ranch with papers in hand and murder in his eyes. "I hear congratulations are in order," he said, voice dripping venom. "How convenient. Married just in time to make everything look proper." "What do you want, Henley?" Dawson's voice was flat. "I want what I've always wanted, this ranch, and I'm prepared to take it by force if necessary." He threw the papers on the table. "Foreclosure notice. Your payment's 3 weeks overdue. The bank is prepared to seize the property." Selene looked at the papers, heart sinking. He was right. In all the chaos of the wedding, they'd missed the payment deadline. "We can make the payment now," she said. "Too late?" The terms were clear. Payment by April 1st or foreclosure proceedings begin. Henley smiled. "You have 30 days to vacate." "Like hell we do." Dawson stepped forward, dangerous. "I'll fight this. I'll take it to court if I have to." "With what money? You can't even make your loan payments. How are you going to afford a lawyer?" Henley's smile widened. "Face it, Creed, you've lost." Selene's mind was racing. There had to be a way out, something they were missing. Then she remembered. "The water rights," she said. Henley's expression flickered, just for a second, but she saw it. "What water rights?" Dawson asked. "The ones your father sold to Henley years ago. They're valuable, aren't they?" She looked at Henley. "That's what this has been about all along, not the ranch itself, the water." Henley's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The drought made water scarce. The rights Walter sold you aren't enough. You need the full property to control the water supply for your entire operation. She stepped closer. That's why you've been so desperate. Without our water, your cattle operation fails. That's speculation. Then prove me wrong. Show us your water access agreements. Henley's face went red. You're bluffing. Am I? Because I think if we take this to court, we'll find that your entire operation is built on shaky water rights. And if that becomes public knowledge, investors will run screaming. Selene crossed her arms. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us an extension on the loan, 6 months. We'll make payments on time with interest, and you're going to stop harassing us. Or what? Or I take everything I know about your water situation to every newspaper in 3 counties. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to get credit from a lemonade stand. Her voice was steel. Try me. The silence that followed was deadly. Henley looked at Selene like he was seeing her for the first time. You're insane. No, I'm desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. She didn't blink. 6 months, take it or leave it. Henley looked at Dawson. You're going to let your wife threaten me? She's not threatening. She's negotiating, and she's better at it than I am, so yeah, I'm going to let her. Dawson moved to stand beside Selene. 6 months, that's the offer. For a long moment, Henley didn't move. Then he snatched up his papers. 6 months, but the interest rate doubles. Standard rate or no deal? Fine, standard rate. He headed for the door, then turned back. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Selene said. You just don't know it yet. After he left, Dawson turned to her. Did you know about the water rights? Not until 5 minutes ago. But I remembered Walter mentioning selling something to Henley, and the timing made sense. She let out a shaky breath. I was gambling. That was one hell of a gamble. Sometimes that's all you've got. She sat down before her knees gave out. We bought ourselves time, but we need to actually make those payments. We will. Dawson pulled her into his arms. Together, remember? 6 months felt like both forever and no time at all. They worked like demons, Selene managing the household and boarders, Dawson running the ranch, both of them scrambling for every dollar they could squeeze from the operation. The girls pitched in however they could. Emma helped Lucy with cooking. Sarah tended the chickens. Even Walter contributed, fixing equipment and telling stories to the boarders that somehow always ended with them paying an extra week in advance. The town watched their struggle with a mixture of sympathy and schadenfreude. But slowly, as weeks turned to months and the Creed Ranch not only survived but started to thrive, something shifted. People started coming to Selene for advice on running households, started asking Dawson about his cattle breeding program, started treating the ranch not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that hard work and stubbornness could overcome almost anything. When September came and the final payment was due, they made it with $3 to spare. Henley accepted the payment with barely concealed fury, but he accepted it. And when the deed was stamped paid in full, Selene felt 10 years of tension drain out of her body. They'd done it. The ranch was theirs, free and clear. That night, they celebrated with a dinner that included everyone, the boarders, the ranch hands, Walter, even some of the neighbors who'd been quietly supportive. Tom made a toast about stubborn fools and the people who loved them anyway. Adelaide recited poetry. Walter got pleasantly drunk and told embarrassing stories about Dawson as a child. The girls fell asleep at the table, exhausted and happy. Later, much later, Selene stood on the porch watching the stars and thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From that train station bench to this moment, married, secure, loved, Dawson found her there. He'd been finding her there a lot lately, learning that sometimes she needed quiet and stars and space to process her feelings. Happy? He asked. Terrified, she said honestly. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. You don't know that. No, but I know that even if something does go wrong, we'll handle it, because that's what we do. He pulled her close. Together. You really like that word now, don't you? Turns out it's not so bad. Having a partner, someone to share the weight with. Selene leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his solidity. I used to think belonging somewhere meant making yourself small, useful enough to keep, quiet enough not to bother anyone. And now? Now I think it means being yourself and having people love you anyway, even when you're stubborn and mouthy and terrible at making coffee. Dawson laughed. Especially then. They stood together under the stars, and Selene thought about Emma's words all those months ago. Marriage is about choosing your family. She'd chosen. And miraculously, impossibly, they'd chosen her back. The prairie wind whispered across the grass, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. The ranch was quiet, peaceful. Home. Not because it was perfect, not because all the problems were solved or all the dangers passed, but because it was theirs. Built from nothing, held together by stubbornness and love, and the refusal to give up even when everything seemed impossible. Selene had come to Blackthorn Ridge with $1.30 and nowhere else to go. She'd been rejected, threatened, and nearly frozen in a train station. And from that desperate beginning, she'd built a life. Not the life she'd imagined. Better than that, real, messy, complicated, beautiful. A life where she belonged. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Mama, I had a bad dream." "Mama." The word still made Selene's heart clench every time. "Come here, sweetheart." She held out her arms. Emma ran to her, and Selene picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. "What did you dream about?" "You left. Like the other ladies." "I'm not leaving. Ever. Do you understand me? This is my home now. You're my family." Emma studied her face in the starlight. "Promise?" "I promise." "Okay." Emma put her head on Selene's shoulder. "I believe you." And that, Selene thought, was everything. After all the struggle, all the fear, all the fighting, a child's trust, a family's love, a place to call home. She'd spent years searching for somewhere to belong, and she'd found it in the last place she'd expected. On a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere, with a damaged cowboy and his broken family. They'd saved each other. Not because any of them were heroes or because love conquered all in some grand romantic gesture, but because they'd chosen each other, day after difficult day, and refused to give up even when it would have been easier to quit. That was the real story. Not about perfection or fairy tale endings, but about ordinary people making extraordinary choices. About finding strength in desperation and love in unlikely places. About a girl who was rejected at midnight and chose courage instead of surrender. And about how sometimes, when you stop running from loneliness and stand your ground, you discover you were never really alone at all. You were just waiting for your family to find you. Dawson wrapped his arms around both of them, his wife and daughter, and in that moment, Selene understood something fundamental. Home wasn't a place. It was this. These people, this love, imperfect, hard-won, absolutely real. And it was hers to keep.